Hello, it's Jonathan here from Boom Instructor Training. You'll soon be watching a clip from one of my Part 3 video tutorials. You can buy all of the Part 3 video tutorials on my website and you will learn all of the ADI Part 3 competences, how to use these competences when teaching pupils, and you will learn how to pass the ADI Part 3 test. The clip you're about to watch is a demonstration and I'm being the ADI and my dad Malk is being the pupil. Malk was an ADI and an ADI trainer for many years himself before he retired. Now, although Malk is much older than the average learner driver, that really doesn't matter because this is a demonstration and we are demonstrating and showing you how to use the competences when teaching a pupil. In this clip, you will see risk management competencies. So you'll see giving clear and well-timed instructions, being aware of the surroundings and pupils' actions, verbal and physical intervention, giving feedback to help the pupil understand any potentially safety critical incidents, making sure the pupil understands how the responsibility for risk will be shared. And you will also see, in terms of teaching and learning strategies, encouraging the pupil to analyse problems and take responsibility for their learning, using opportunities and examples to clarify learning outcomes, and giving appropriate and timely feedback. In this demonstration, the pupil makes a use of speed fault. The pupil is driving too fast for the prevailing road and traffic conditions. So on your Part 3 test, if this were to happen, then this tutorial shows you how to deal with it. So let's check it out. Check to the rear and start to brake. Start to brake now. I'm just going to help you. I'm just helping you slow down a little. That's it, that's okay. Now we're down to about 10 miles per hour. Now you can continue. Just maintain this speed. That's it. And again, slow down to about 10 miles per hour here, look. Just maintain this speed. That's fine. And then at the end of the road, turn left. And then let's turn right just here. And then I want you to find a safe place to pull up on the left. Then we can have a little chat about what happened back there, okay? So pull up on the left at a safe place. Is that signal necessary, do you think?
Probably not.
Yeah. Is anyone to the rear?
No, there isn't.
Any activity to the front?
No.
Yeah, so signal's not necessary in that situation.
Okay.
Okay, let's switch off then. Okay, well, let's have a chat about what happened a minute or so ago when I just helped you with the brake to reduce the speed. Can you describe the situation for me? Can you think back and describe what happened?
I didn't realise there was so much happening. There was a lot happening.
Yeah, so you was driving too fast for the situation that you was encountering. So driving too fast for the road and traffic conditions. So really, I think you've just told me why that was. You didn't really realise perhaps what was happening. What can you describe it to me now? What did you notice as we got closer to that situation?
Well, I didn't realise there was that burger van, and then there was a lot of activity just after the burger van and that, and I just didn't realise that at the time.
Yeah. So as well as the burger van, what else was on the road that you needed to deal with?
There was an obstruction with that lorry there.
Well, there was lots of
and
parked
people
vehicles,
there,
wasn't
yeah.
there? Yeah, there was lots of parked
Yeah, there
vehicles.
was.
And therefore, how did that affect firstly, the available space that you had to use?
There wasn't a lot, was there?
So you had
No.
less space,
I
didn't
did
you?
have less space.
So as a basic rule in driving, if you have less space, what would you do with your speed?
Less speed?
Less speed, yeah, that's it. So less space, less speed. What was your view of the road ahead like? Did you have a really good view of the road ahead, or was it a very restricted view of the road ahead?
Probably restricted.
Restricted view of the road ahead, yeah. So if you can't see too well ahead, again, what do you think a sensible thing would be to do with the speed?
Slow down.
Slow down, yeah. Because let's think about the risks of dealing with that situation. So if I hadn't have intervened and helped you with the brake, and you'd have continued along the road at 25, 30 miles per hour, considering you'd got a really restricted space and restricted view, what could the risks have been in that situation?
If somebody had stepped out.
Yeah, so somebody just got the burger from that burger van, and then they just step out and cross the
I
road.
wouldn't have been able to stop.
Exactly, you'd have really struggled to start, wouldn't you? Absolutely. And what could have, the worst case scenario, what could have happened?
Run over someone.
Run over someone, absolutely, yeah. So considering all of that then, we'll have a circle round, and I'm going to let you try that again. You tell me, what are you going to do differently next time?
I'm going to try and identify the problem and slow down more.
Yeah, and how are you going to do that? And how? Because you said you didn't really realise what was happening. What are you going to do in order to identify hazards earlier?
Look more ahead.
Look further ahead, absolutely. And as well as looking straight ahead, so as well as looking well ahead, where else do you need to be looking? Because where was that burger van? It wasn't actually on the road directly ahead, was it?
Off the road, yeah. So looking each side more. And
yeah, absolutely. Scanning. Yeah, so we'd call that scanning. So as well as looking well ahead, scanning to the left and scanning to the right. And why is that important, to scan to the left and scan to the right as well as looking straight ahead?
For activity on the pavements and
activity on the pavements, side roads, driveways.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So that's the plan. So you're going to look further ahead, plan ahead, scan left and right, and then you'll be able to anticipate these hazards developing, and then you've got plenty of time to respond to those hazards. And how would you respond to that? So you see a hazard ahead, what's your first response when you see a hazard?
mirrors.
Mirrors, that's it. So assess what's happening to the rear, and then you can adjust your speed, adjust your position accordingly. Slow down, buy yourself some time, and then you can decide what to do. If it's safe to proceed, sometimes you even have to bring the car to a stop. So we're going to circle round again, go back to that same situation, and then I'll give you a little instruction on the approach this time. So I'll take a little responsibility, and I'll give you some guidance in terms of where to be looking and what a sensible speed would be. And then we'll have a second practice at it, and the second time around I'll pass that responsibility over to you. But the first practice, I'll be giving you a little bit of guidance on the move. How does that sound?
Fine, absolutely.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So in your own time, I'd like you to drive on. Okay then, Mark, so we're approaching that same situation. So look well ahead, look, we can see it in the distance. So start checking the mirrors and reducing the speed, yeah? Let's reduce the speed down to 15 miles per hour. So quick glance at the speedometer. Remember, scanning left as well as looking ahead. Okay, no activity this time. Let's say down to 10 miles per hour now to go through this limited space, and then scanning again. Look, is there any activity behind the lorry to the left here? That's it. Because your speed is sensible, if anybody stepped out, looking ahead, you could easily deal with it. So, end of the road, turn left. And how did that feel that time, dealing with that hazard?
Felt much better.
Okay, well, let's go round again, and then we'll have one more practice, and this time I'll just leave the responsibility in your hands for the next practice. So end of the road, turn left. So we're approaching that same situation. This time I'm just going to keep quiet and let you deal with it safely. That's good. Yeah, I can see you taking good observation. I can see you scanning, so that's good to see. Okay, well done. And then at the end of the road, turn left. Yeah, I'm really pleased with that. You dealt with that very safely. Can you feel the difference?
Indeed, I can.
Okay, that's great. So from now on, when you deal with a similar situation in the future, hopefully you'll be better prepared to deal with it. So we've just watched a demonstration where the instructor, myself, helped the pupil to move forwards with their learning, and clearly the pupil's driving ability improved. And this is what you need to do on all of your lessons, and certainly on your Part 3 test. This scenario that you've just watched would have satisfied the requirements of the Part 3 test or standards check. So in terms of what you've just seen, it would have been a pass on a Part 3 test. Overall, it was very good. There is room for improvement. I could have done something better, and we'll discuss that a little later. Firstly, let's recap over what we've just seen. So I noticed the pupil wasn't responding to the food van and all of the parked vehicles. So I successfully managed the risk by verbally intervening. Now the pupil didn't respond sufficiently, so I then physically intervened. I used the dual control brake pedal. This way I made sure the speed was sensible and there was no risk to road safety. And you'll notice that I kept calm and I kept relaxed. I just helped the pupil deal with that at the time. And then I asked the pupil to turn left, then turn right. And then I asked the pupil to pull up on the left. And then we discussed what just happened, which was driving too fast on approach to the hazard. Why that happened? Well, because the pupil wasn't looking and planning far enough ahead. The pupil didn't realise what was happening. They hadn't identified the hazard. Then we discussed the risk, and then we discussed what to do differently next time. And that's the basic structure, that's the basic formula for dealing with any mistake the pupil makes. I then directed the pupil back round to approach the same hazard. It was convenient to do so. It was only a short drive to get back round to that situation. And this time I decided on the second attempt to take some control back. So I made it clear that I would be giving instruction to help the pupil deal with the hazard on the second practice. So this is the balance of responsibility. The pupil knew what was expected of them. I was going to give some instruction and the pupil was going to follow my instructions, and the pupil was fully aware of that. They knew what was expected of them. The pupil did very well following my instructions, so I decided to shift the balance of responsibility, and then for the third practice I let the pupil try without me giving any instruction, and I made the pupil aware of this. I made the pupil aware that they would have full responsibility for the third practice, so the pupil knew what was expected of them. And the pupil did very well by themselves on the third attempt. Therefore, we could see a real improvement. Now, I would recommend when you're teaching pupils to reflect after each lesson. Ask yourself what went well, what didn't go well, and consider what you could do differently next time in order to improve your teaching ability. So, what could I have done better? Well, let's watch this short clip again where myself and the pupil were discussing risk. Let's think about the risks of dealing with with that situation. So if I hadn't have intervened and helped you with the brake, and you'd have continued along the road at 25, 30 miles per hour, considering you'd got a really restricted space and restricted view, what could the risks have been in that situation?
Somebody have stepped out.
Yeah, so somebody just got their burger from that burger van, and then they just step out and cross the road.
I wouldn't have been able to stop.
Exactly, you'd have really struggled to stop, wouldn't you? Absolutely. And what could have, the worst case scenario, what could have happened?
Run over someone.
Run over someone, absolutely, yeah.
So I said to the pupil, what could the risks have been? And then the pupil replied, if somebody had stepped out. And this is really where, on reflection, I could have done a better job, because what I then did is I butted in and I basically started taking over the conversation, and I started talking and telling the pupil about the risk, and I gave my own example, which was the example of a pedestrian stepping onto the road from the food van. Now, what I should have done, and this is what I would encourage you to do, so on reflection, it would have been far better if, after the pupil said, if somebody had stepped out, if I'd have then said, oh, tell me more, where could somebody have stepped out from? So I ask another question, a follow-up question, to encourage the pupil to explore this further. Maybe the pupil would have said, oh, well, there was that lorry there, and maybe there was a pedestrian behind the lorry that I couldn't see, and maybe they could have stepped out. So perhaps that is what the pupil was thinking, which would have been a really good example, but I never gave the pupil the opportunity to explore that for themselves. So that was a mistake that I made. I could have done a better job there. And by asking this follow-up question, tell me more, where could somebody have stepped out from? By asking that follow-up question, I would be encouraging the pupil to analyze the problem for themselves, because the most effective learning takes place when your pupils solve their own problems. So what's the lesson here? So the lesson is, when you're teaching pupils, try and resist the urge to just tell them what you think. Firstly, try and encourage your pupils to reflect on what happened and come up with their own ideas. Now, of course, if they struggle doing this, then you can provide input and you can tell them what you think. But firstly, allow them the time and the opportunity to come up with their own ideas. Also, when you're teaching pupils, discuss and explain things in your own words, in your own style, in a way that makes sense to you. So don't try to copy what I've been saying word for word. That won't make sense. Just use your own words, use your own ideas. Every instructor will explain and discuss things slightly differently, and that's absolutely fine. But the basic structure must be the same as what you've just watched on the clip. So you may use slightly different words to what I'm using, but the structure should be the same as what you've watched on this clip. Check out my website if you'd like to watch all of the Part 3 video tutorials, and these will show you exactly how to teach pupils from a beginner all the way through to test standard, and it will also show you precisely what you need to do to pass the Part 3 test. There's a link in the top comment to my website. Thank you for watching, and do remember, when you're teaching pupils, just keep it simple and enjoy it.